Welcome to Counterpoint. I'm Tanya Granick-Allen. Vaccine passports are here, and across the provinces, they are more or less the same. If you want to go to a theater, eat inside a restaurant, work out at your gym, or attend a concert, you need to show proof of vaccination, a vaccine passport, to gain access. If you choose not to disclose or you simply are not vaxxed, then no soup for you. Many Canadians are furious, though, with these vaccine passports, which seem to have created a two-tier society. And it seems many small businesses are upset with the passport system as well. They're still trying to recover from government lockdowns, and now this. Segregation of their clients? Your staff, that is, if you're not being impacted by the worker shortage, are already overworked, and now they have to deal with the anger and frustrations of patrons when they refuse to show you their personal medical status. I simply fail to see how this helps. Think on it for a moment. I'll use a restaurant as an example. A masked, unvaccinated individual can walk into a Tim Hortons, use the bathroom, order food from the counter, wait the 5 minutes for the food to be made, but he cannot sit at the table in the area next to him and consume the food with the other vaxxed patrons who, by the way, aren't wearing masks to consume their food. If the point of all this is to slow the spread of the virus, it's completely lost on me. It doesn't seem fair to Canadians, and it certainly doesn't seem fair to small businesses who just want to get on with it and want some alternative to lockdowns, which crippled and forced the closure of so many businesses. Is the vaccine passport the key to business survival, or will this be the doom? Will the goalposts change again? Can small businesses survive COVID? Or will the passport be the straw that will finally break the camel's back? Well, joining me later in the program is Jenna Graham, co-owner of the Harbour Diner in Hamilton, Ontario, who is choosing to defy the Ontario vaccine passport edict in the face of fines and penalties. But joining me now to give his perspective on how Canadian small businesses are coping with the new mandates is Ryan Mallough, Senior Director of Provincial Affairs with the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, it's a tough topic. I think this is probably the most divisive topic I've seen in Canadian politics, amongst the Canadian populaces in years. So maybe we'll scale back for a moment. So were Canadian businesses eager for this vaccine passport system?
So it really depended on the nuances of how it was being implemented. When we survey our membership, there was pretty solid support for something around foreign tourists coming in and travel. There's pretty solid support for a passport around things like football games, hockey games, large concerts. But when it got down to the employee or Main Street customer level, it got much more divisive. And in our case, we have what we would call a split vote. We've got some very passionate voices in favor of them and some very passionate voices opposed to them. But really what it comes out with is that this is a divisive issue, in particular in the small business community.
And it's not as if businesses have the option to opt in or out. If you're in the restaurant sector, pretty much across this country, you're not eating indoors unless you have a vaccine passport. So if you are on the other side of the opinion sphere, if you will, as a say, a restaurateur who doesn't want to deal with the vaccine passport, there is no opt-out, am I right?
That's correct. There are a list of businesses that are mandated to do it. Indoor dining across the country, gyms, recreational fitness are another popular one, conference centers, wedding venues across the board as well. So if you're mandated, then you absolutely are required to do it by law. Where we are seeing an uptick is there are some businesses, say in the retail sector, which is largely not required to do it in any province, but some businesses are asking if they can. And then we're getting into a whole legal privacy rights, human rights potential issues as well. So it really becomes a gray area on all sides for small business owners. Okay,
and so with that retail, because this is news to me that there are some, I guess you could call them proactive vaccine passport implementers, because they're not mandated by health code or by law to do this. So if a small business were to do this and they're not ordered by the government to, and they want to voluntarily implement the system, would that mean that they're open to legal challenges or human rights code challenges?
So we are recommending extreme caution for any businesses looking to go down that road. And you do want to clear it with a lawyer first, because there are some privacy hurdles. There are some human rights hurdles, some accommodations that you would have to make sure that you are doing. And in addition to that, you don't have the government backing of saying, hey, we're on this list, we do have to do it. So absolutely, there are some human rights challenge potential. There are some legal on the privacy side challenge potential as well. So it's not a hard no, but it's also a seek legal advice before going down that road.
Welcome back. I'm joined by Ryan Mallough, Senior Director of Provincial Affairs with the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses. We're discussing vaccine passports in businesses. So before the break, we were talking about how some businesses, which aren't even mandated to bring in vaccine passports, are doing so proactively. What would motivate a business to want a vaccine passport? Say, because I know there was some discussion about this in the last lockdown, that there needs to be something. So what is the impetus here?
So I think fundamentally what we can't have happen in any province of the country, in particular here in my home in Toronto, Ontario, is to go through another full-scale shutdown. The first 3 across the country have been absolutely crushing. The businesses that have made it this far are really hanging on by the skin of their teeth. To go through it again, that would just be it for too many businesses. So I think that's what's guiding some of the desire for those that do around this, is they see this as an avenue to avoid a 4th lockdown, to show that, hey, we're being proactive, we're keeping customers and employees safe or vaccinated or whatever the belief is, but they're doing it to avoid that 4th lockdown.
And I feel really badly for a lot of these small businesses, because, I mean, maybe you can provide a stat here, but how many businesses to date that you're aware of have now gone belly up because of, well, I guess the lockdowns?
So it's hard to pin an exact number on it. I know StatsCan is tracking, although their data lags by a few months, but our estimates show that 1 in 6 small businesses in this country were looking at the risk of permanent closures, around 250,000 small businesses across Canada, which is just an immense number when you're thinking about, your Main Street barber, your favorite shop. It's really our local economies here that are at risk.
Well, and I think everybody knows somebody who's had their businesses shut down, or they've had to make that harsh decision, especially when they have so much invested in their business. And I remember we had one of your colleagues, Dan Kelly, on several months ago, and I know this sentiment of avoid a lockdown at all costs. What can we do instead? I remember there was a discussion of potentially bringing in rapid testing. Why was that not being pursued, or is that potentially still being pursued?
Yeah, so there are programs across the country. Again, Ontario, I believe Alberta's got one as well, where chambers of commerce are offering free rapid tests to small businesses. So we are very supportive of those. But that was something that we were looking on earlier when there were still en masse capacity restrictions or full business shutdowns across the country. We were looking to say, hey, why can't we use rapid testing to say, test the hairdresser, test the person coming in for a haircut. They're both negative, you're good to go. Why can't that business be open? Now that vaccine take up is what it is, I think that governments are a little bit less interested on this side, but we want to make sure that we are using all of the tools that are available to us in the toolbox to make sure businesses are open as fulsomely as possible moving forward.
Right. And when your options are lockdown or vaccine passport, some people might say, well, I'm going to have to pick the lesser of 2 evils, because for some people, they may not be comfortable with a vaccine passport system. I have issues with this because I'm concerned about segregation, 2-tier society. I really want equality for all Canadians. So this is a concern for me, because there may be some, for whatever reason, cannot or choose not to get a vaccine. Should they be shunned? What if it's a business owner? What if they don't feel comfortable implementing something like this? So, we're obviously going to be speaking to a small business later on in the program, but how is the compliance with vaccine passports among small businesses?
So it's been a little bit bumpy to start. There's still a lot of confusion out there in terms of who needs to be doing this, what it is they need to be looking for, what situations they need to be looking for. I mean, you talk about a business owner that may be vaccine hesitant. It is the case in Ontario and in Quebec and in BC, where you could have a business owner who can come into their restaurant to run the restaurant and to do the day-to-day operations, but couldn't actually enter their own restaurant as a patron to sit down and eat there, because the vaccine passport requires patrons to check, but not on the employee side. So there is still a lot of confusion.
Sorry, just to clarify. So an owner of a restaurant can be unvaxxed, their staff can be unvaxxed, but it is the patrons who come and eat who must be vaxxed.
Yes. So you can run into that situation where the owner or a staff member can work at the business, but if they were to come to the business in their off hours as a patron, would be denied entry.
That's confusing.
Little bit. And that's what we are seeing, across the country. And we are still a little bit in this early phase where there's a little bit of a staring contest kind of going on between some business owners and inspectors, a little bit of hesitancy on both sides. And that's something that we're watching closely because we know at some point that's going to break. And the question is just sort of which way and how severely.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we were all anticipating something like this coming into effect across the country. We heard a lot of rhetoric over the summer to this effect. Businesses, again, some wanting it, some not wanting to have a vaccine passport system. But now it seems that there are these ad hoc advocacy groups online and Facebook groups that are saying, we're against the pass, we're for the pass, come eat here. It's almost becoming the secondary marketing thing on social media. Anyhow, we're going to pick up this discussion in just a few moments. Welcome back. I'm picking up our discussion on vaccine passports and how they are implementing small businesses across this country. And joining me is Ryan Mallough with the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses. Ryan, you mentioned in Ontario, for example, amongst your members, your membership you surveyed, it was pretty much down the middle, those who wanted a vaccine passport system, those who opposed it. Were there any other interesting facts that jumped out for you when you interviewed your members?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is when you do put it into that context of avoiding a fourth lockdown, you actually see support shoot right up to 63% here in Ontario. And I think that really speaks volumes to the impact that lockdowns have had on small business owners. It has been tremendously difficult over these last 18 months to keep your business afloat. And that's not just pressure on the business owner as an operator. That's immense pressure on employees. That's immense pressure on client relationships. That's immense stress and psychological pressure on the business owner. And all of this is kind of coming to a head as we get to the end of the pandemic, but we're just not quite over the finish line yet. Unfortunately, the introduction of vaccine passports across the country is really exacerbating that stress as business owners kind of try to navigate it on the fly.
I think it is very stressful. I mean, stressful for me as a patron. I can only imagine what it's like for a business owner. I recently, since Ontario, because I live in Ontario, implemented its vaccine passport system, I had a conversation with a restaurateur. They told me that their business almost cut in half the first weekend as a restaurant that the vaccine passport was initiated. I was shocked. Is this what you're hearing from other businesses and restaurants?
So it's something that we're looking to survey in to see what the impact is. I will say anecdotally, we have heard a few of those stories that their businesses did take a hit on that first week. We're looking to see if that is something that was maybe just a little bit of caution at the beginning or if it does become a trend. Certainly, though, if it is found to be a trend, that would be immensely concerning, especially in the restaurant industry. I mean, patio season is coming to an end. It's getting colder. Everyone's moving indoors. If their business is being cut in half when they're already restricted to, 2 meters between tables, that is going to be devastating in the winter months.
To me, the vaccine passport system, if it continues as with some of, again, just anecdotal information that I've received that some other business has been hindered with it, to me, it's almost achieving the same effect as a lockdown because, restaurants can shift quickly to doing takeout. But when you're offering in-person and takeout, I mean, there's only so much one can do. And I know even some restaurants, when they started opening things up in the summer for in-person dining, they were hesitant. They said, well, we don't want to do it yet. We want to wait a couple of weeks because they might lock us down again. And I said, my goodness, this is a very tough way to live.
Incredibly tough. And I mean, we have seen some restaurateurs already make the decision to shut down indoor dining and go back to takeout because they don't want to deal with the vaccine passport side of things or put their employees on the front lines of having to deal with that, which of course is a hard hit to the business when you lose, your dining room. So it's been incredibly tough and something that we're going to watch as we move forward. But we will be looking, especially here in Ontario. Premier Ford indicated not a day longer than it needs to be here, and we will be looking to hold him to that promise.
Well, we'll have to see. I know he just recently in Ontario, for example, increased the arena and stadium capacities. So more persons who are vaccinated and show a vaccine passport can enter. I think 10,000 persons is quite a jump.
Yeah, and it's great for the Blue Jays and the Leafs and the Raptors. Really hard to explain to a bowling alley why 30,000 people can sit at Rogers Center together, but not more than half the lanes can be open. So that's sort of the other big thing around vaccine passports is these businesses that are being asked to do them here in Ontario, they're still restricted. None of those are at 100%. They're at best, they're at 50.
Right.
That needs to change if they're going to have this additional burden put on them as well.
We only have about a minute and a half left. What about gyms, fitness facilities? I've seen some fitness facilities say that we're absolutely not going to implement this mandate. Some say that they think it's unhealthy to get the vaccine, so they're not going to do it at all. And then some said 100%, we're doing the vaccine passport, and that's going to be what it's going to be. It's confusing for consumers.
It is, and I got to say, it's confusing for gym owners too. I mean, this is a membership-based business where you tend to see your clients pretty frequently, if not every day of the week, maybe every other. And depending on what province you're in, you may have to check them every single time they come. You may only need to check them once, and then moving forward. We're getting different answers across the board. And it's just another layer of complexity on their side, let alone for patrons coming in, knowing whether or not they have to show, their vaccine passport for the 5th, 6th, or 7th time, or if they only need to show it once.
And again, 30 seconds left. Exemptions. Are there exemptions to these policies? If someone goes to a restaurant, can they say they're exempt? Are they going to have to furnish something? What seems to be the rule?
So it depends on the province. The main exemption that we're hearing is medical exemption. However, that's not a catch-all term. There are specific conditions. Allergy to something in the vaccine or heart condition seem to be the main two. But carrying around a doctor's note instead of the passport seems to be what medical officers are asking patrons to do.
Okay, Ryan, thank you so much. We'll have to check in on this in a few weeks. Thank you very much. Well, there are many businesses who are saying no to the vaccine passport or who have concerns about its implementation. And joining me now is Jenna Graham, the co-owner of the Harbour Diner in Hamilton, Ontario, who's actually choosing to defy the Ontario vaccine passport edict. Jenna, thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm really excited to delve right into this discussion. You're a small business owner. Prior to the vaccine passport, how did COVID regulation impact your business?
I mean, they added a few extra things, like obviously to check, get a name and a phone number, which, if you're a smaller business like us, we don't have, the manpower to, when we're really busy, it's kind of left on the server to, go around and do so. We don't have a hostess. We're not that big to have it. But other than that, we always were very clean and tidy restaurants. So sanitization, obviously throughout the whole pandemic, that has obviously gone up about 50%. But other than that, it wasn't too bad. It was something that we could definitely tolerate, especially given the manpower that we do have, in our establishment. Now, in terms of adding the Vax passport to it, we just don't have the manpower to it. I'm still here at work. I cook, I waitress. We don't.
Yes.
We're not a large corporation. We are just a small mom and pop shop. And to add all this extra work, we don't have the manpower for it. And people are already, they get a little impatient, and then let alone having to add these extra steps that we just don't have time for. It's unfortunate. And it's not that we can't make time for it. It's just, it's very unnecessary when it was completely fine the way it was for 18 months.
So if you were able to be given extra funds to implement this passport, then you'd say, okay, we can do it?
Well, if the government was willing to step up and give us a person of their own to do it, and it wasn't coming out of my pocket, by all means, we would enforce it. If they want to send somebody down, and this is the one thing I've said, if they want to send somebody to come enforce their regulation, then that's fine. They can do so.
Gotcha. So has business been slower or busier? Because you were quoted in a national paper, that your business is not going to comply. Some people have different reasons for not wanting to enforce this. Yours is a very practical one. No manpower. We're short-staffed. You've just come out of lockdown. Small business. It's hard. I get that. So has business now been slower since the start of the vaccine passport? Are people avoiding eating out? What has your experience been?
You know what? We've kind of got a mixed bag. Definitely the hate towards the establishment has gone up. Everyone obviously has an opinion. For some reason, they just assume that we are anti-vaccination, which is not the case. About 75% of our staff are vaccinated. We just don't feel like we shouldn't know whether or not you're vaccinated or not. It's not our job.
Yeah, I was chatting with some friends the other day, and I said I would loathe to be the front of house employee, the host who is seating people and has to actually ask these questions, because it is private healthcare information, and I know we're in a special circumstance now. I appreciate all that, but it's uncomfortable, and us Canadians don't like to ask personal questions.
And I think with us too, like people know the stats. Like obviously, it's been quoted as well because of the area my establishment is in. We are in a lower vaccination rate area, so automatically, like 50% of our regular clientele is not vaccinated, which is obviously their choice. But we're also in the downtown Hamilton core where we get a whole mixed bag of people. So to put my staff in jeopardy of asking somebody whether or not they're vaccinated or not, and then to have to tell the person who is unvaccinated, sorry, you can't come in here, that puts them at a risk. Just up the street there, everyone knows about it, the McDonald's, where the employee got punched in the face because she had simply asked, can I see your passport? And we're in an area where we're near shelters, we are near a very low income area. We have affordable housing all around us, and there's crime. There is guns, there is violence, and they want me to put my staff in the line of fire with people who are, unfortunately, due to the pandemic as well, mentally unstable. They've lost their homes, they've lost their jobs, they've lost their family, they've lost their livelihood, and now they're bitter. And then for me to add this another nail to their coffin by saying, I'm sorry, you're not allowed in here. No, absolutely not. I'm not risking any of my staff or my self-safety. I would rather take whatever the government throws at me in fines. They want to be that heartless. I will take it. I'm not risking my people. I'm sorry.
Wow, very passionate. Thank you, Jenna, so much for sharing your story. And I hope things get better for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting perspective on how businesses themselves are being impacted by the vaccine passport and when it comes to their staff and their staff safety. For Counterpoint, I'm Tanya Granick-Allen.